Oh, the nostalgia of the carpet that was also a little city for your cars has been transformed by AI, something I did not know that I needed, but I really, really needed. Look, the city is now the carpet. The stupid carpet is now an entire cinematic universe thanks to AI. We're gonna look at a problem when my favorite WWE wrestler decides to give all the objects in his environment emotions and how crazy the future is gonna be. Scientists have turned scales into feathers by tinkering with chicken genes. I wanted to make sure you know about a concept called differential privacy. Turns out OpenAI and Retro Biosciences collaborated to make it so that stem cell development is now 50 times more efficient. Nano banana is not just for putting people in banana outfits anymore, it's also for faking moon landings, so be aware. There's some new evidence that early humans may have hibernated. So if you've been kept up at night not hibernating because you've been thinking about what came before the Big Bang and before the point where there was anything to be before, new study is suggesting that dark matter might predate the Big Bang. We're going to talk about the skill of the future, which is learning how to learn, at least according to Google DeepMind CEO Demis Hassabis. The future of self-driving cars is going to have a whole bunch of traffic jams, according to some research on autonomous vehicles. We have seen some funny things from Waymo, and the Tesla self-driving cars seem to be just as bad. So you'd think it would be like mass coordination through swarms, but it might get really congested before it gets cleared out. And Walter High has the curiosity of all curiosities for the week, of course, with this concept. What if information didn't even exist before the evolution of life? But the most important thing you can be doing right now, for me, hyping this video, if you hit that hype button, it completely disproportionately helps a small channel like mine compared to if you hype one of the big channels that you already follow, helping me like break through. I'd love to get to like 100K subs one day. I've been, working for years to get to 25, but if you want to hype this video, that would just absolutely mean the world. It's like more important than Patreon or comments or anything like that. All right, let's start by taking a blast into the past. Do you remember this rug? I do. I'm an only child, so I sat with this rug and my toy cars and my toy dinosaurs and my toy transformers and all that stuff. Like this city, I don't know why, it's probably more nostalgic for me than the average person. But when I saw somebody who had the idea to just take this into some of the AI models that can, create video, I was like, how fun is that? Like this is the most toddler retro thing I have seen, and it's just fun. But anyway, this guy, Orbit Sci AI, he's making a bunch of cool AI videos, but for some reason, this carpet one, holy crap. And look, even BBB Golf admits this is the best thing AI has done since it took his job. So if you've also spent the last decade thinking about the pass the butter meme from Rick and Morty.
What is my purpose?
You pass butter.
Oh my god.
Yeah, welcome to the club, pal.
Then you'll love this creator's experience using modern AI technology to bring all the inanimate objects in his environment to life.
Hello?
La 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 la. I'm just a lonely little hammer on the floor. I hope someone comes and builds something with me.
Hi, Hammer.
Oh, I see someone approaching. Hey, sir. Sir, can you please come pick me up?
That's so weird.
Sir, Mr. Feet, please grab a hold of me. Ah, yes. It feels so good to finally be held. Let's hit something now.
Yo,
Right now.
I'm good. Oh, it
Please,
can't
sir,
hear me.
Anything. Just hit me on something.
Nah, I'm all set.
Ugh, right when it was getting fun.
Yo, imagine products we buy just talking to us, saying, come play with me. I mean, it's literally like Toy Story meets marketing, mass manipulation, and like product connection, and the human experience is just, I don't even know. This commenter says, when you create a sentient hammer, everything looks like a nail. Do the toilet next? No thanks. All right, so if you've been wondering which animals you can sneak up on from behind the best, the answer, according to this chart, is the mouse and the dog. Actually, look at how bad humans are. Humans would even be worse, but I'm assuming as a human, you already know. This is the field of vision around different animals, blue being binocular, and then I think monocular means kind of more like peripheral vision, like you can tell it's there, but you can't quite see the depth in it. and then your blind spots. Uranium says the predators have front-facing eyes for better depth perception, whereas prey usually have side-facing eyes for better field of vision. They want to see what's sneaking up on them. The other guys want to like capture them, you know, get them in focus. Boom. Man, I guess Ooh, is that true? Maybe. Dogs come from wolves, so they're predators. Humans, you know, we got our whole thing there. Mouse isn't much of a predator, but a cow definitely feels like prey. Pigeons seem like more predators. Let me know in the comments if you can get some clarity to that. All right, so if you were thinking about how to turn scales into feathers by tinkering with chicken genes, I have exactly the article you want to read. So yeah, some researchers found that by tweaking just one of the signaling pathways in chicken embryos, it is called the sonic hedgehog pathway, so that's like a bunch of different genes, or like different genes in order as you go down a path, they could turn what normally would become scales into feathers, which shows just how closely connected these are. So by injecting an activator of the SHH in foot scale regions, it led to the permanent growth of juvenile down type feathers instead of scales. What's your thoughts on that? Like, this is crazy stuff. And they also could do the opposite. They could block the pathway early on to cause a temporary proto feather like structure to appear. So the change from scales to feathers might not need massive gene duplications or huge mutations, but rather just a little bit of timing, levels of expression, and key developmental genes turned on at just the right moment. So usually when we see stuff happening with AI and biology, it always feels like Google's DeepMind team is there doing it. But this time, it was actually OpenAI and Retro Biosciences teaming up to supercharge stem cell research. So they were creating AI-designed proteins that make the process way faster, 50 times more efficient than before. Now, this is what we have to do, right? You have to take cells that have already differentiated into something, a skin cell, a muscle cell, etc., and then reset them back into something that can become anything else. These proteins that they're finding more efficiently, those are the proteins that make that happen. So these proteins not only speed up the conversion of normal cells into stem cells, but they also improve their ability to repair damaged DNA. And there is a special model. It's a version of GPT-4 called GPT-4b Micro, and that's what played a key role in designing these proteins. But it's marking a major step forward in longevity science and regenerative medicine. And it's crazy that it wasn't just discovering or analyzing, it was actively designing new proteins that work better than what humans had come up with before to reset these cells. So yeah, this could really, in the long run, extend human lifespan. Maybe we will be able to just take our cells and turn them back into stem cells. And I guess at that point, we're kind of maybe can regenerate all sorts of stuff. All right, let's talk about Google's release of Vault Gemma. So these are pretty small open source models. They're 1 billion parameters, like relatively speaking, compared to the big stuff like Gemini runs on. What's different about this is these models were completely trained with something called differential privacy, meaning the data that was fed into it from the beginning had a whole bunch of extra noise added to it so that it still learned from the data, but it didn't specifically see any piece of data. So this is kind of for privacy. This is for IP. Imagine you take a bunch of images of, say, Mickey Mouse or something, and then you add all of this noisy data so that a human can't even tell that Mickey Mouse is even hidden in there in any way. You feed that to the model, it learns, and it can then do something like Mickey Mouse, but you never really broke privacy laws, or at least what you put into it was changed enough that it didn't match the original IP. Because what you want is the generalized information from it. You actually don't want to copy it, right? And that's what people are now using. And these models could be all sorts of private data individually that we don't want out there, our address, our social security numbers, stuff like that. And then there's all new scaling laws that come along with these models. So now there could be a strategic way in the future that if you do want to send private information into the cloud so that one of these models can help you with something, yet the model wouldn't be able to recreate that exact information for someone else because it never technically saw the exact information that was private. But yeah, basically the big discovery here was that training dynamics for private models can be boiled down to a single key ratio. It is called the noise batch ratio. It is the balance between adding privacy noise and batch size of the data. And this simplification gives researchers a powerful tool to predict and optimize training outcomes under strict privacy constraints. Basically, a roadmap for building ever larger private LLMs without flying blind. And to me, this feels like one of those key things before mass adoption in the corporate world, with everybody wanting to, keep their secrets to themselves. So we'll see how this plays out. All right, so Thomas Smith, writing on Medium, is having some fun by faking moon landing images with Google's new Nano Banana. And I'm pretty sure someone out there is going to think these are like leaked truth from the massive cover-up of going to the moon. So as he writes, conspiracists often claim that the moon landing was staged in a studio. So playing around, he handed Nano Banana a real NASA photo of astronaut Buzz Aldrin on the moon, and then asked it to pretend that the photo had been faked in a studio that would have been appropriate for the time, and this is what it came up with. What do you think? You think someone out there who's just dead set on proving that the United States never went to the moon would capture a photo like this and start sharing it, honestly believing he has evidence? People in the image have period-accurate clothing. They're standing around a soundstage with a fake sky backdrop. And in short, if you were going to fake a moon landing, Nano Banana's imaged soundstage would be pretty reasonable photographic setup to use. Yeah, why not just imagine that the Wright brothers' iconic 1903 photo of their first flight was staged? And sure enough, Nano Banana adds wheels, period-accurate wheels, to the plane. So yeah, of course, fake photos have always been a thing. Photoshop's always been a thing, but Nano Banana brings knowledge to the deception, like what kind of wheels to put on that thing or how to dress the people that you're pretending are taking a photo of a fake moon landing. And it just makes it so much more ubiquitous to just fake stuff. So was the moon landing real or fake? My gosh, ChatGPT 5 says the moon landing was, in bold, real. Evidence, moon rocks, retro reflectors, independent tracking, photos and videos, subsequent missions, backed by overwhelming scientific, photographic, and physical evidence. There's some new research that shows early humans may have hibernated through long winters. But a newly published study has investigated if early humans had the ability at some point to hibernate, and the results, although preliminary, are surprising because they suggest that they could, even if they weren't good at it. All right, so here's what's going on. The study's suggesting that early humans, and this would be a different branch, Homo heidelbergensis, I'm probably saying it wrong, but something like that, they're the humans that were on Earth, kind of an adjacent species to us, right? Or a species is the wrong word, but they're not Homo sapiens, but they're similar to us. And this would be 430,000 years ago. They may have attempted a form of hibernation during very harsh glacial winters. There would be some gene crossover if this is true. Fossil evidence from a cave in Spain shows that bone damage and seasonal growth patterns that researchers think could be a sign of humans trying to survive months with little food and sunlight. And unlike bears, though, our ancestors didn't have the perfect biology for this, which may have left them with health problems like rickets and kidney-related diseases. But the most striking insight here is the possibility that humans may carry a genetic and physiological legacy of hibernation. So even if we've lost that ability, if true, this could mean that our bodies still have some hidden potential for hypometabolic states. And although that sounds like sci-fi today, that could one day shape medicine, space travel, or survival in extreme environments. And of course, what we saw earlier with that whole genetic pathway in chickens where there was scales or feathers, it kind of makes you wonder, maybe we could reactivate it and start hibernating. Next up, let's talk about the Big Bang and what came before it. So there's some astronomers and some theoretical physicists at UT Austin that have put forward a model called, they're calling it Wi-Fi, but it actually isn't just for the Wi-Fi you're used to. It's warm inflation via freeze-in. And it suggests that dark matter might have been created during cosmic inflation before what we usually call the Big Bang. I don't know, before is a kind of a tricky word when you're talking about before the Big Bang, because time and space seem to be kind of created and tied up in a way that's very unintuitive. But the idea is that when the universe was expanding extremely fast, there was a, quote, thermal bath of radiation interacting weakly with particles. And through a process called freeze-in, those interactions made dark matter without it ever being in thermo-equilibrium. And according to their calculations, that if you follow this through, enough of it would have been made to basically match what we observe now. So it's worth really looking into this Wi-Fi, warm inflation via freeze-in theory, this new model. But it's also really interesting because it's the first model that tries to push the origin of dark matter earlier than nearly all conventional models. So it didn't come after inflation, but during it, which is weird because usually anything made during inflation is thought to be, you know, quote, inflated away, diluted until it becomes negligible. But this is a mechanism where dark matter survives and accounts for what we see, so maybe it will lead to the real answer. All right, so this is Demis Hassabis, one of the most important people in the world of AI. He is the OG, the person who was doing the most advanced research when way back in the day, even Elon and Sam Altman said, hey, we need to build some kind of a competitor to what this guy is doing. And he is saying, and he's very thoughtful about this stuff, that learning to learn is the key future skill. So there's a lot going on here. Now, he's predicting that AGI arrives within a decade. He talks about radical abundance. He talks about emphasizing these meta skills, adaptability, continuous learning, and optimizing approaches alongside traditional disciplines. And this resonated to me. In fact, it feels so intuitive. It's not the way the world taught us to be, and it usually doesn't seem like that leads to any real benefits. But in a world where everything's just shifting underneath you, you got to surf the changes. You know what I mean? So maybe for you and me, it's just like speaking to the choir. But when you're talking to other people that you care about that don't really get it as much, you might have to break it down that simple, even though it doesn't feel like it. He's arguing that with AI advancing at breakneck speeds, adaptability, problem solving, lifelong learning will matter more than static knowledge. And we got to be careful because there's a really good chance that AI's benefits are not widely shared. I mean, I want them to be. Even if it balances out, there's probably going to be some serious inequality for a while on the way there. All right, so let's talk about driverless cars. Like, we are rapidly entering a world where Waymos and self-driving Teslas and all sorts of other third-party companies are going to start hitting the roads in a serious way over definitely this next decade. And at first I was like, wow, think of how much wasted parking lot space there is. There's going to be tons and tons of new areas in cities that can be turned into green spaces or into new buildings. But then I also kind of actually use my Tesla to self-drive, and I do see how kind of pointless things can be in the directions that it goes. And then I started thinking about lots of them just trying to make money for their owners and trying to like all be in one spot, like the way Uber drivers are to pick people up, and how they don't really care how slow they get places, and they might just end up backing everyone else up, especially people that are in cars and waiting. The article is basically arguing that while self-driving cars promise safety and convenience, they could also cause mass congestion. They could worsen pollution. They could undermine public transit if cities don't adapt. And much like how cars reshaped cities a century ago, erasing green spaces, prioritizing parking, and sidelining pedestrians, this new autonomous vehicle world could once again transform urban life. And it might just be more robo-taxis and endless deliveries of cars that start cruising the streets and clogging it up. Let me know in the comments. I'm curious about it. I haven't thought about it till right now. All right, and I'm going to leave you with one of those wild things I have been thinking about, and this one really got to me. So Walter High here wrote this article on Medium. Information did not exist before the evolution of life. Claude, for example, from Anthropic, you probably know it's named after Claude Shannon, not the founder of information theory, but the modern version of it, working at Bell Labs, tried to actually quantify what information is, measuring disorder and then information, and information being sort of a static pattern. You can think of it in so many different ways, little bumps in a groove on a CD or all these different things, but it is a physical change in the physical environment that we live in. But information itself is not physics. Information is a system property. You have to build up to it. But it feels like everything that makes a decision, everything that's biological life, everything that does anything except just exist is information. And it's weird to think about. So I recommend reading this article because it's one of those that you have to read a few times and you have to keep kind of thinking about and applying to other aspects of what you're learning. But if you buy into it the way I kind of do now, information isn't a property of the physical world itself. It's something that only emerges when a system, especially living ones like us. But information requires rules, context, recognition, and only becomes possible after life evolved the mechanisms to encode and interpret these signals. So something like the early Earth, and then you start thinking about everything that is information, right? An abacus to instructions on DNA to computer software. Information is always tied to a system that gives meaning to otherwise meaningless data. And for all this stuff on our computer we do, all this digital stuff that's on the cloud, there is a system that's physically changing, like the hard drive on your computer, and some other system can interpret that pattern. In some way, they're just opposites. Physics just exists while information requires interpretation and structure. And that means, if you think about it, before life, there was only matter and energy. Information, as we understand it, it literally didn't exist until organisms came along to process and use it. Press the hype button under this video.